Holy f***ing shit. Chapter 9 of Crippled God. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys. After my last Crippled vlog here on the channel, I thought, I should probably start reading larger portions. I've gone chapter by chapter through the beginning, but as we get toward the middle section, it's probably going to be a lot of setup or whatever, and I should do like 2 to 3 chapters per video. Then Erickson, you master mother, put in this gem of a chapter 9 that might be the best chapter in the entire series. So it was like he was anticipating my every thought. So good. I loved this chapter so much. Let's get into it. In fact, I liked it so much, so I read it last night before bed. I was exhausted. I had a long day at work, 12-hour shift. Came back, couldn't put the book down. And then this morning I get up, before I even drink my first cup of coffee, I'm in front of the camera. That's how good this chapter was. And I'm even cursing a lot, which means I have to edit more, but it's that good. It's got me cursing. First off, though, the first little thing, chapter 9, the creaking chair and wax in the fire, I don't know what that is. Moving on. Olar Ethiel and her duel with Talk, and then against Torrent for the kids, and then opposite of that is Tool talking about his fighting against her, or sort of like his plan now that he is being first sword of this new sort of stitched together clan of Talanamas. Amazing. What does Talk say? When you barter with death, you always lose, or something like that. Foreshadowing to the end of the chapter. So cool. That storyline is really going places, because you know that this Talanamas, whichever side that they pick on, are going to sway the ending of this book. Are they going to fight for humanity? Doesn't really sound like it at this point. Are they going to fight for the Forkless Sail? That also doesn't seem true. They're kind of like chaotic neutral at this point. But we are so highly invested in Tool and who he was, even if we're not really huge fans of who he is. This just carries immense weight. And it's just Erickson's communication of despair and sadness through the Talanamas and Tool in particular is touching, and an incredible challenge to us who are living to live that to the fullest and realize that life and death are two sides of this same coin, and they give meaning to each other, and without one, the other becomes sort of this prison and this fear. There's this great line said ironically. This is Tool thinking, "We are the glory of immortality." And obviously there's not much glory in the Talan and Mas and their sort of morose existence at this point. So that all automatically would make it a good chapter. Then we move to Gruntle, where we get, I think, the first mumblings that, like Setok, he's sort of losing himself to his animal instincts that he gets from his god, and maybe he is going to also sort of join with this conglomeration of people conspiring against humanity as a whole. You can see that, like, he despairs that they have pushed so many of his kind out of where they should be. So again, interesting. And then we get to the real meat of the revelations. All right, so from Tool, we learn that Dasam Ulter, way back in the First Empire, he was named First Sword of the Logos Talanamas, and that is actually why the Talanamas allied themselves with the Emperor and the Malazan nation or empire as a whole. That was never clear, and we thought always it was because Shadow Throne or Kalanved sat on that first throne, and that's what got him to ascend, and that's what gave the Talanamas, allowed them to follow Kalanved and gave them 7 cities and a whole bunch of other important things in the history of Malazan. And of course, the interesting part is, in the Book of the Fallen, we only get hints of this whole, what would be the main story in most epic fantasy. And so this is a huge one. We also learn that it wasn't Kalanved's death that made the Talanamas leave, it was Dasam Ulter's. And I don't remember if we have this confirmed or not. I believe Dasam Ulter is Traveler. Someone correct me in the comments if you want. You don't have to. I've said this before. I read these books not trying to know exactly everything that's happening and like going back and triple checking and looking at the wiki or whatever. like that, I find that that takes out my enjoyment of just kind of figuring out what's going on and living in this space. So I think he's Traveler, which makes that very interesting, and again, goes back to Tolls the Hounds with what happens in the end there. So that revelation on its own would have made a great chapter. And then we go to Felash and Shurk and the shipwrecked crew. And literally, last video, you can check me on this, I said that I was getting a little bored of this narrative stream and that I'm sure it would have a good ending, but I was getting a little bored following it so closely. Then, of course, in the next chapter, we have this incredible scene. First off, we get another perspective from a Forquil Assail. This one's name is Sister Equity. From her perspective, we also get a smaller revelation. I think this is sort of said, you know, in the back of her mind, so we're not really delved into this, but it sounds like the Naruk were part of the Forquil Assail plan. I think we're going to hear more about that, but that would make the ending of Dust of Dreams make a lot more sense. Because one of my criticisms of the ending is the battle is great, but the Naruk are not really a known enemy. We're not really sure what they're doing. And the whole thing I know is coincidence and bad chance. But still, I think this would add a lot of weight to the end of that book and that battle in itself. So we hear from her. It's interesting now because we don't know the Forquil Assail going into this. She's going to ask them for allies. We see this amazing fight scene where, like, a bunch of crew are trying to attack her, and they just have no chance. I mean, she just takes them out at will. And then she's trying to, like, make allies with them. She's belittling them the whole time, like, not a fan of this Forquil Assail. But then she says something, and she's like, Omtos Falak, you shouldn't be able to use that unless you're a Jagat, which, you know, I even said previously it's weird that Felash is able to do this. They go back and forth, and eventually she's like, no, there's a Jagat. And Felash is like, okay, fine, I'll open Omtos Falak and see what happens. Then, like one of the coolest reveals ever, boom. Hood comes out of Omtos Falak, ice, cold, going everywhere. He comes out and literally bites the face off of this Forquil Assail. One of the craziest scenes ever. Amazing. And I think, what does he say afterwards? He says, I never much liked Forquil Assail. Oh, so good. And then Felash is like, man, that really escalated quickly. And then this great joke that we as the reader know, but Felash doesn't know, and he says, recently a friend taught me a lesson in brevity. And of course, that's a reference to Toll the Hounds when Hood is having like his little soliloquy, and Mandarake just cuts off his head. And so now he did the same thing to this Forquil Assail. So good. Such an ending. And now that Felash, Shurk, and now Hood storyline went from like number 8 on my most interesting to like number 1. Hood I have just loved so much, from the history we get from Dead Smell to what happened in Toll the Hounds. His entrance into Darujistan is one of the coolest sequences in the whole series. I mean, I've always loved this character, and now he's more intimate to us and involved right there in one of these key storylines. I'm so excited to see where this goes. This chapter was gold. Like I said, one of the best in the series. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. I want to talk about this, so please comment a lot. First in, last out. Like and subscribe.